You hear about AI everywhere, right? It's the future. It's going to change everything. But what if the massive hype isn't really about the technology itself? What if it's a story about tax loopholes, a trillion-dollar pile of cash, and a ticking clock for some of the biggest companies on Earth? Well, that's the pretty wild argument we're going to explore today.
So, which is it? Is AI the next industrial revolution, or is it an economic time bomb just waiting to go off? The analysis we're breaking down today makes a really bold claim. It's not just a bomb, it's a bubble that was pretty much manufactured on purpose. And the story of how it all got built, it's absolutely fascinating. Okay, so here's the game plan for how we're going to piece this whole puzzle together. First, we're going to look at a really strange paradox at the very heart of big tech's value. Then, we'll uncover this hidden hoard of cash, we'll see how a single policy change basically unlocked that cash, and how all that money lit the fuse on the AI bubble. And finally, we'll look at how we might be able to diffuse it. All right, first up, let's talk about this valuation paradox. This is really the why in our story. What on earth makes companies like Google and Microsoft worth trillions of dollars? Well, it's probably not what you think.
Just take a look at this comparison. It's pretty wild. In 2024, Google's parent company Alphabet made about $100 billion in profit. The oil giant Saudi Aramco, they actually made a little bit more. And yet, Google was valued at nearly $1 trillion higher. That means investors see a dollar of Google's profit as being worth almost 50% more than a dollar from Aramco. So, what gives?
The answer is it's not about the money they're making right now. It's all about the money investors think they're going to make tomorrow. See, the entire valuation of big tech is built on this promise of endless growth from world-changing innovation. But here's the catch. For almost a decade, that growth had kind of stalled. They were hitting a wall, and to keep their stock prices way up in the stratosphere, they desperately needed a new story to tell investors.
So, we've got the motive, right? This desperate need to look innovative. Now, let's talk about the means. And that's where this absolutely staggering pile of cash comes in. By 2015, big tech companies had piled up over 1.5 times trillion dollars in offshore tax havens. I mean, to put that number into perspective, that's about the size of Canada's entire economy. And they did this by basically exploiting international tax laws, hoarding all this wealth to avoid paying U.S. taxes. But there was a huge catch. They couldn't touch it. If they brought that money back home, it would get hit with a massive tax bill. So you have these companies desperate to innovate, sitting on this dragon's hoard of cash that's totally locked away. What do? So they've got the motive and they've got the means, but the means are locked up tight in a vault. What happens next is the key that opens that vault and sets this entire story in motion. And this is it, the key turning in the lock. The 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act created a one-time tax holiday. All of a sudden, big tech could bring those trillions of dollars back home and pay only a tiny, tiny fraction of the normal tax rate. The dam was officially about to break. And right here, this is where it all comes together. The pressure to innovate meets a tidal wave of newly unlocked cash. So what do you think they spend it on?
I mean, just look at this timeline. Look how fast this all went down. The cash gets unlocked in 2017. By 2019, Microsoft is already pouring $1 billion into OpenAI. Then ChatGPT launches in 2022 and the hype just explodes. And a year later, Microsoft is in for another $13 billion. You see, AI was the perfect story. It was the radical innovation big tech needed to justify its sky-high valuation.
But according to the source, a really strange thing started happening. Something called circular financing. Think of it like this. Microsoft gives $1 billion to OpenAI. OpenAI then turns around and uses that same money to buy a ton of chips from NVIDIA. Well, NVIDIA's value soars, which, guess what, makes investors like Microsoft look great on paper. It's kind of like a few friends passing the same $100 bill around to each other, making everyone look rich without actually creating any new wealth. And when that cash wasn't enough, because here's the secret, AI is still wildly unprofitable, they just turned to debt. Big tech started borrowing insane amounts of money just to keep funding bigger and bigger AI projects, all to feed this perception of growth. This makes the whole system incredibly leveraged, built on borrowed money, and according to the source, that makes it incredibly risky. So if tax policy got us into this mess, could different policies get us out? The source we're looking at proposes two big ideas that it argues could have stopped this whole bubble before it ever even started.
First up, a global minimum corporate tax. This would basically make tax havens useless. The argument is, if this were already in place, big tech would never have hoarded those trillions offshore in the first place. And as you can see, a 2021 survey found that 58% of Americans, across party lines, actually support this idea.
Now for the second piece. We have to understand the personal incentive for executives. Many of them use a strategy the source calls buy, borrow, die. They get paid in stock, then they borrow against that stock tax-free to pay for their lifestyle, and they never have to sell the shares or pay back the loans. This system gives them a massive incentive to do anything that jacks up the stock price in the short term, like, say, an AI bubble, rather than focusing on stable long-term growth.
And that brings us to the second proposed fix, a wealth tax. By taxing huge fortunes, you change the whole incentive structure. It would make more sense for executives to focus on tangible, profitable growth that can support a real salary. And the source points out this 2019 Fox News poll, which found that 68% of voters, Fox News, favor a 2% wealth tax on fortunes over $50 million.
So, where does all this leave us? Well, the source's ultimate conclusion is that this entire saga reveals something really deep about how our economy is structured.
And here it is, the core argument, right in one sentence. The AI bubble isn't really about AI. It's a symptom of a system that, according to this analysis, prioritizes the appearance of growth for capital over real, tangible value for everyone else.
Which leaves us with a big question, right? If specific policies built this massive, high-stakes bubble, can a new set of policies dismantle it safely? Or are we all just along for the ride hoping for the best? It's definitely something to think about. Thanks for tuning in.